Thank you for joining me back at my workbench. If you watched that intro and think to yourself, that is a terrible way to store pistol molds, I agree with you. And I'll post a picture up here to show you the way I used to store my pistol molds in my old shop before we moved. And hopefully someday I'll get that set back up in my new shop. If you're new to the channel, I want to say thank you for joining me at my workbench where I go over projects that I build out of leather. It'd be great if you would subscribe, hit that notification to be updated on any new videos that I do where we can share tips and tricks. So if you've clicked on this video, I can only assume that you're getting ready to build your own holster or you're just interested in what makers use as molds when building holsters. I'm by far not an expert holster maker. I've made a few of them and there's far better makers than myself that you can probably learn from. But I had a friend of mine in South Carolina and I live in Missouri contact me to build a holster, and I don't have access to his firearm, so I'll just go through and explain what I use when I get orders from friends or family to build holsters. My first example that I'd like to talk about is this holster that I recently made for my cousin. He picked up this revolver, and yes, it is unloaded, and anytime you are making a holster with a real firearm, always make sure that it's cleared. But this is probably for somebody making a holster for themselves or very limited holsters. If you have access to the actual firearm, there's not a problem with using that. I always wrap these with saran wrap, so when I'm wet molding the holster, I don't get moisture on the actual firearm and rust it. When you don't have access to the actual firearm, or a friend is from another state or family member and you're making several of the firearms, the next option is blue guns. There's several different models coming out or manufacturers that make pistol molds. Rings Manufacturing in Florida is the one I use. They're probably the best tolerances to the actual firearm, but these are picked up, I'd say fairly cheap, somewhere around $50. You can use these, you don't have to protect them from the moisture. If you dye your holster, you can throw these molds in. It doesn't matter if they get dye or wet, but plastic molds are the next option. Now the last thing that I've used, and I've only done this a couple times, is if I can't get the actual firearm or Rings Manufacturing doesn't make a mold. For example, this Rhino 5-inch pistol, I 3D printed this one. 3D printing firearms is an option. However, this took me about, I'd say 24 or 26 hours to print. Then I had to glue it together and fill in some holes with some JB Weld to seal that up. So overall, I have about 30 hours, I'd say, in putting this thing together. It worked for the project. However, when time's money, 3D printing a mold is not the best option. I hope with this video, you better understand the reasons why I pick what I use to build my holsters. If you enjoyed this video, remember, hit that subscribe button and ring that bell for future notifications. Put a comment down below for any future videos that you'd like for me to talk about. And also check out my other videos that I'll link here and here.